After my grandmother died, I was officially an orphan. But on the seventh day after her passing, a man showed up at our door. He handed me a non-disclosure agreement. As I read it, the world tilted on its axis. I was the illegitimate son of Julian Croft, the wealthiest man in Denver. And the man was here to offer me $1 million to sever that tie forever. The man, the tycoon's driver, explained that my grandmother had contacted my biological father just before she died. But the Croft family's fortune and reputation in Denver were too immense to be tarnished by such a scandal. Besides, Croft Industries was on the verge of a major leadership transition, and my father couldn't afford any surprises at this critical juncture. I got it. I was a pothole on his road to success, one he could pave over with a little cash. A bitter smile touched my lips. I took a pen, drew a large X through the dollar amount on the agreement, then signed my name and pressed my thumbprint beside it. Thanks, but I don't need the money. And I don't need a father. I looked him in the eye. You can see yourself out. The driver stared at me, dumbfounded, for a long moment before leaving in what looked like shame. For a fleeting second, when I first heard the news, a secret joy had flickered inside me. I'd grown up hearing the whispers, the taunts of bastard from other kids. My craving for a father's love was a hunger I'd learned to hide from everyone, even from my own mother before she died. She passed when I was 7. Depression finally took her. Looking back, I realized what an incredibly strong woman she was. Anyone else might have given up long before, abandoned by the man she loved, pointed at and judged by everyone. The slut, the homewrecker, the trash who got knocked up. Each word was a bullet that hit harder than lead. She was too good for this world. After the driver left, I thought about all the pain she had endured, and the tears I'd been holding back finally broke free. If she knew that the man she had loved so deeply was a monster who wouldn't even acknowledge his own son, she'd probably claw her way out of her grave to strangle him. But then again, that wasn't her. She was too kind. It's why she never told a soul that the father of her child was a billionaire, not even on her deathbed. She was disappointed in him, but she was full of hope for me. She must have wanted me to live a normal, happy life, to not be corrupted by the poison of a wealthy family and grow into a monster like him. Her last words were burned into my memory. I'm so sorry, sweetie. You'll have to walk the rest of the way on your own. Remember, you can only rely on yourself. Don't ever count on anyone else. You have to live, and you have to be strong. I'll be watching you from heaven, watching my coal become the brightest star in the sky. I was 7 years old, but the moment she took her last breath, I felt like I'd aged to 17 overnight. I became fiercely independent. I never went out to play. I knew my mom had died because we had no money. My grandmother had borrowed from every relative we had, even mortgaged the house. To pay it all back, she took a job as a night shift orderly at the hospital. From that day forward, my life revolved around two things: studying relentlessly and working. For years, it was under-the-table jobs, washing dishes, bussing tables, anything I could find. By the time I was 17, I'd take on any summer construction gig I could get because it paid better than a diner. Over the years, I'd scraped together more than $30,000. Sometimes I couldn't believe I'd managed to save that much in a decade. Ring, ring, ring. The sharp sound of my phone pulled me from the painful memories. It was my homeroom teacher. I set down the framed photo of my grandmother and answered. Cole, it's all taken care of. You can move into the dorms. Thank you, Ms. Albright. Don't mention it. Cole, I know you're going through a lot right now, and it's bound to affect you. But your college applications are due in 2 months. The best way to honor the people we've lost is to show them we've become even better because of them. You understand what I'm saying, right? Yes, Ms. Albright. I understand. Thank you, Ms. Albright was my champion. She saw something in me because my grades were always stellar, leagues ahead of the salutatorian. It wasn't because I was a genius. It was because of sheer effort. From the moment I turned 7, the first thing I ever truly understood from a teacher was that education could change your life. That knowledge was a tool to build a better future. All I heard was that it could make me money. So I threw myself into my studies with a desperate intensity. I'd be reciting formulas while stocking shelves, memorizing historical dates while mopping floors. I did practice SAT questions until midnight every night and fell asleep listening to vocabulary audio tracks. I was up before 6 a.m., headphones on, drilling Spanish verbs on the bus ride to school. Everyone else saw some kind of prodigy. They envied my grades and looked up to me. But only I knew the true cost of it all. When other kids spent their weekends and vacations playing video games, going to comic conventions, or hanging out at the mall, I was working a double shift at the diner with a calculus textbook propped up against the napkin dispenser. The day the SAT scores were released, Ms. Albright had me sitting in front of her computer in her office. She was so nervous her hands were trembling. When she'd asked me how I thought I'd done, I had answered with the calmness of a statue. I don't think I got any questions wrong. That had left her speechless, her eyes glistening with tears. I was her star pupil, the crowning achievement of her teaching career. But it was more than that. She knew my situation, and in many ways, she treated me like her own son. Over the past 3 years, I had felt her genuine care and support. Of course, if I became a top scorer in the state, or even nationally, it would come with a lot of scholarship money. I was definitely counting on that. Before long, her office was packed. Most of the teachers who taught me were there. Eventually, even the principal and the vice principal showed up. They were all waiting. Ms. Albright's hand hovered over the mouse, clicking the refresh button on the College Board website over and over. I wasn't this nervous when I was in labor, she said, try to break the tension. The other teachers were calmer, already discussing where to hang the banner with my photo for next year's student recruitment. The principal was on his phone, trying to see which local corporations they could hit up for donations. Finally, the page loaded. A perfect score. 1,600. The room fell silent for a second, then erupted. A score like that was practically unheard of. Forget being the top scorer in the state. This was national news. The teachers were jumping up and down like kids. Several of them started crying. But I remained perfectly still. I knew my journey was just beginning. A few days later, the headlines were everywhere. Denver's orphan prodigy aces SATs becomes Ivy League sensation. That day, I went to my mother and grandmother's graves. I cried all morning, telling them I hadn't let them down, and that I was just getting started. As I stood there, my phone rang. A strange number, ending in 9999. I had a gut feeling it was him, my so-called father. This time, I didn't decline the call. I needed to know. I wanted to hear the voice of this heartless tycoon, to understand what he looked like, what he wanted. I was right. The first words were cold, arrogant, radiating a chilling distance, even through the phone. This is Julian Croft. Your father. Do you have time to meet? Fine. I answered, my voice just as cold. He gave me an address, and I went to the headquarters of Croft Industries. The skyscraper was a landmark in downtown Denver, soaring 99 stories into the sky. When I entered the lobby and gave my name, the security guard's demeanor instantly changed. He practically bowed, escorting me to Julian Croft's office with the subservience of a lapdog. The office was absurdly large, like a palace from a movie, opulent, but utterly devoid of warmth. Julian Croft didn't stand. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, he was tall and powerfully built, with sharp eyes behind a pair of glasses. He simply set down the file he was reading and said, "You're here." The resemblance between us was undeniable, etched in the lines of our brows and the set of our jaws. Any lingering doubt I had vanished. This man was my father. "I'm here," I reply, my tone flat. "What do you want?" My bluntness clearly caught him off guard. A flicker of surprise crossed his face before his mask of composure slipped back into place. He waved a hand, dismissing the security guard, then fixed his gaze on me, studying me from head to toe. Just as I expected, a son of Julian Croft, a true prodigy earning a perfect score. He leaned back in his chair. "So, tell me, what do you want as a reward? Anything in this world, just name it. Don't be shy." I almost laughed out loud. "You might want to watch your wording, Mr. Croft. We have no relationship." He froze, an expression of disbelief on his face. Then, he shook his head and chuckled. "Son, I admit I haven't been there for you, but I had my reasons. I brought you here today to clear the air." I remained on high alert. I'd learned one thing over the years. When someone offers you something for nothing, they're either a con artist or a thief. The man who had tried to buy my silence for $1 million was now smiling, ready to welcome me with open arms. Anyone could see there was a catch. "Cut the crap, Mr. Croft. We're both adults. Let's not waste time." Seeing my unyielding attitude, he dropped the pretense. "Fine. I like your spirit. You remind me of myself when I was young. In that case, I'll be direct. We can tear up that old agreement. If you come back to the Croft family, I can help you. When I retire, this entire empire can be yours." I scoffed. "And what's the catch?" "You officially take the Croft name. When your grandfather sees I have such a brilliant son, he'll have no choice but to hand the company over to me." And there it was. In his eyes, our blood connection was nothing more than a business transaction. Any last, desperate hope I had for a father withered and died. I refused. I turned to leave. "If there's nothing else, I'm going." "Stop right there," he boomed, his voice sharp with anger. I stood with my back to him, a storm of emotions churning inside me. What child doesn't dream of a father's love? Especially me, the boy who'd spent his life being called a bastard. But I could never forgive him for abandoning us. My mother, were she alive, would never want me to do this. Julian strode toward me, his face now level with mine. I could see his eyes were red-rimmed. Cole, are you insane? Do you have any idea how massive this company is? If you inherit all of this, you'll have more wealth than you could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, something people would kill for. I stared at him, tears welling in my eyes. Not tears of joy or gratitude, but of pure, unadulterated rage. The emotions I had bottled up for a decade finally exploded. Shut up, I yelled. I don't want a single damn thing from you. You say I'm a prodigy? Do you know why I'm 6 feet tall and barely weigh 150 pounds? People think I'm just staying in shape. But the truth is, I couldn't even afford to buy a Coke. While other kids were going to McDonald's or grabbing pizza, I was lucky if I had meat once a week. While other kids are getting picked up by their parents after school, I was walking home in the dark. I was 7, you bastard. 7. You think I wasn't scared? I was terrified. But what could I do? I was the kid with no dad. A bastard. And you play your little games and wait to swoop in and claim the prize. Now that I'm grown, now that I can stand on my own 2 feet, now that I'm in the spotlight, now you remember me? Where were you for the 17 years I suffered? My words hit him like a physical blow. He stood there, stunned for a long time. For the first time, a look of genuine regret flickered across his face. He reached out, his hands gripping my shoulders. Cole, I do love you. I always have. Get off me, I roared, shoving his hands away. Don't touch me with your filthy hands. Love? You don't know the meaning of the word. You got your cheap thrill, but where was your love when my mother was dying? When I needed a father more than anything in the world? If I hadn't gotten a perfect score on the SATs, that non-disclosure agreement would have stayed buried until my bones turned to dust, wouldn't it? His regretful eyes started to glisten. Maybe in that moment he finally saw himself for what he was, a cold, calculating, heartless machine. A monster. I stared at him with utter contempt, as if he were a pile of garbage. Then, with a cold, mocking laugh, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, frozen like a statue. I pulled myself together and went back to school, burying myself in prep work for my college courses. Ms. Albright called to tell me that both Harvard and Yale had reached out, offering not just full tuition, but generous stipends. I need some time to think, Ms. Albright, I told her. I didn't want to stay in the country. I needed a change of scenery, a place where I could get out from under Julian Croft's shadow. I wanted nothing to do with him for the rest of my life. Ms. Albright didn't press. There's no rush, she said. The principal mentioned that some of the top 3 international universities have also been in touch. We can wait and see what kind of offers they put on the table. I'll let you know. Thank you. She must have noticed the strain in my voice, because she asked if I was okay. I brushed it off, not wanting her to worry. She probably thought I was stressed about the cost of studying abroad. That's when she brought up a tutoring opportunity for the daughter of a friend of hers. I didn't mention it before because I didn't want to distract you from your applications, she explained. But now that it's summer, you could take it on. The family is very wealthy. As long as you can help their daughter make some progress, they'll pay you very well. The thought of making good money was enough to convince me. I also figured a change of pace might help me escape the oppressive weight of my own thoughts. Soon after, the girl's father called me. It turned out to be the Vance family, well known in Denver for their pharmaceutical company. They were loaded. A short while later, their driver was waiting for me at the school gate. When he heard I was the kid with the perfect SAT score, he was incredibly respectful. He even asked if he could have some of my old class notes. I handed him a notebook without a second thought. I had stacks of them at home piled high. Better to give them to someone who could use them than to just throw them away. The driver was thrilled. To show his gratitude, he gave me the full rundown on the girl I was about to tutor. Her name was Sophie Vance. She was a sophomore in high school. Her mother had died when she was young. She was a total rebel, skipped class, hung out at bars, smoked, drank. She also had a penchant for picking fights, supposedly to stand up for the underdog. In short, she was a classic troubled rich girl. I was grateful for the heads up. It helped me prepare. Compared to her, my life had been far darker. We soon arrived at a gated community of mansions. The driver led me to a front door and knocked. A stunningly beautiful woman answered, looking to be in her mid-20s. Oh, you must be Cole. The prodigy, she gushed. I nodded silently. She was gorgeous, but she wasn't a high school sophomore. Come in, come in. My dear Sophie is in her room, probably playing video games. I can't get her to come out. Maybe you can go on in. Her smile was overly eager, her politeness so forced it made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to ask who she was. Okay, you can show me the way. I followed her up to the second floor. She knocked on a bedroom door a few times, calling out softly, Sophie. Silence. The woman turned to me with an awkward smile. She gets so absorbed in her games. Maybe we should wait downstairs. You could go ahead, I said. "I've got this." She raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Well, all right then. She's all yours." Her tone implied, "Let's see what Mr. Perfect Score can do." I stood there for a moment, thinking, a girl who grew up without a mother. It was a void I knew all too well. The only difference was that her family's wealth had given her a safety net. She could do whatever she wanted without ever considering the consequences, because someone would always be there to clean up her mess. But the driver had said she liked to stand up for the little guy. That meant she wasn't a bad person at heart. Her rebellion was just a cry for help. The way to reach someone like that wasn't with force, but with a story even more tragic than her own. And my life was a living, breathing example. I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to let it all out. Leaning against her door, I started to talk, my voice low. I began with the day my mother died when I was 7. I talked for over an hour, the words pouring out of me, recounting the grief, the loneliness, the struggle. I was crying by the end, the 17 years of pin-up emotion finally being released. I had never told anyone this much, but perhaps it was because she was a stranger that I could finally say it all. Suddenly, the door creaked open. I turned, my eyes blurry with tears. The girl, Sophie, stood there chewing bubblegum. She wore a pair of tiny shorts that showed off her long, pale legs. Her dark hair was cut to her shoulders, framing a delicate face with exquisite features. She looked down, as if seeing a reflection of herself in me. Our eyes met for a long moment. "Come in," she said, swinging the door open. A small smile formed on my lips. She was still just a kid, easily moved by empathy. Once inside, I didn't mention studying. We just talked awkwardly at first, but then it was like a floodgate opened. She started talking, and soon she was crying harder than I had. The beautiful woman downstairs was her stepmother. Her father was always away on business and was almost never home. She had grown up surrounded by luxury, but starved of affection. All her rebellious acts were just desperate attempts to get her father's attention. I just listened, letting her pour out her heart, stepping into her world. Maybe because I was a stranger, she felt safe enough to be vulnerable. We talked for the entire afternoon. I never once mentioned tutoring. As I was leaving, I said one last thing to her. "You should appreciate what you have. You still have a father who loves you. Don't wait until you have nothing, like me, to realize what's important." When I got back to school, I threw myself back into my studies. I was sure the tutoring gig was a bust. It had just been a brief, intense connection between two broken people who would now go their separate ways. I remember my mother's words. "Cole, you can only rely on yourself." Her voice always echoed in my mind whenever I felt like giving up. She knew I had no one else to depend on. Sophie's life was the complete opposite. But that evening my phone rang. It was Ms. Albright. She said that Sophie's father had just gotten off a plane and wanted to meet me, to discuss the tutoring and to pay me for the day. I was surprised since I hadn't actually tutored her at all, and it had been the driver who'd first contacted me. But when I heard the word pay, I agreed to go. I went to the address Ms. Albright sent me. It was a 5-star hotel. I found a private dining room and walked in. The beautiful stepmother was there, along with Sophie, and, of course, her father, Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance stood up to greet me warmly, pulling out the chair next to him. "Sophie told me you're an exceptional teacher. We'd be grateful if you could tutor her for the rest of the summer. This is a small token of our appreciation." He slid a bank card across the table. "The pin is 0829, Sophie's birthday." He didn't say how much was on it, but I knew it was a significant amount. I thanked him without any fanfare and slipped it into my pocket. My gaze fell on Sophie. She was wearing a simple white dress that complemented her fair skin, looking every bit the proper young lady. During dinner, the conversation mostly revolved around my study habits. They were all curious about how I'd achieved what I had. Sophie, however, was unusually quiet, stealing glances at me from time to time. I had a nagging feeling that the girl was developing a crush. The restless energy of youth, the pull toward the opposite sex. I knew it well. But I couldn't afford it. With my looks and my academic record, I got love letters from girls at school almost daily. I never opened a single one. The next morning, I arrived at the Vance house as scheduled. Sophie was clearly happy to see me, dressed conservatively with a touch of light makeup and a hint of perfume. A sweet, shy smile played on her lips constantly. It confirmed my suspicion. The girl was smitten. All her little efforts were designed to create more time with me. I knew I couldn't reciprocate. The things you can't have are always the most desirable. I decided to use her crush to my advantage, to help her catch up on everything she'd missed in school. She might hate me for it later, but I didn't care. First, it would make her a better person. Second, it would make me money. This time, Sophie was prepared. Her desk was covered with sophomore-level textbooks and materials. But when I flipped through them, The pages were all pristine. I pulled out a quiz I'd prepared, a physics test, to gauge her current level. The moment she picked up her pen, she froze on the first question. She shot me a helpless, doe-eyed look. It was so transparent, it was almost painful. Every glance, every gesture was a plea for attention. I turned my back to her and sat on the edge of her bed. Just do it. Answer what you know, guess the rest. The clock is ticking. Disappointed, she turned back to her paper. As I expected, she was done in less than 10 minutes, handing me the test with a sheepish look. Here you go, Mr. Matthews. I gave her a stern look and glanced over the paper before tossing it aside. You're really something else. You picked C for every single multiple-choice question and left the rest blank. She wasn't ashamed in the least. Well, that's what all the teachers say, she quipped. When in doubt, choose C. I shook my head. This afternoon, I'll bring you a test for freshmen. We need to see where to even begin. No need, she said brightly. Let's just start with middle school. I was stunned into silence. But Sophie was quick on her feet. She suggested we go to the mall. Since I didn't have the other test with me anyway, it seemed like a reasonable request. At first I refused, telling her we could just print one from her computer. But she was insistent. If you spend the morning with me, I promise I'll do whatever you say for the rest of the summer. I'll study hard. I weighed my options. One morning of my time in exchange for a summer of cooperation? It was a fair trade. I seriously underestimated her shopping addiction. By the time we left the mall, I was her personal pack mule, loaded down with so many bags I even had them hanging around my neck. By the afternoon, I was exhausted but relieved. For some reason, I had actually gone and prepared 3 tests: math, English, and science, from the 5th grade curriculum. This time, Sophie took it seriously. She finished all 3 in under an hour. I checked her answers. Perfect scores, all of them. You were messing with me, weren't you? I asked, looking at her in disbelief. She grinned mischievously. And they call you a genius. Did you really think I was an idiot? That I couldn't answer elementary school questions? I was speechless. The clever little minx had played me. I immediately printed out a set of 9th grade final exams and dropped them in front of her. Sophie's face fell. Mr. Matthews, she whined, putting on her best puppy dog eyes. You said just one test this afternoon. I wasn't falling for it again. A deal's a deal. You said if I went shopping with you this morning, you'd do whatever I scheduled for the rest of the day. She pouted, shot me a resentful glare, but picked up her pen and got to work. This set took her much longer. The sun was setting by the time she finished. I went through them carefully. Her middle school foundation was solid. She just completely checked out after 9th grade. With some hard work, she could catch up. Before I left, I gave her a firm dose of encouragement. She beamed, clearly pleased with the praise. Then she started asking other questions. Cole, are you going to Harvard or Yale? I paused. I hadn't decided yet. I'm not sure. I might go abroad. I'm waiting to hear back from a few international universities to see which one offers the best resources. Abroad? She asked, her surprise evident. What's wrong with staying here? There's nothing for me here but bad memories, I answered honestly. I told her everything about myself, except for the part about being a Croft. Besides, a top 3 international school would be better for my future. Oh, was all she said, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. It felt like my words had just crushed a young girl's budding hopes for romance. As I was about to leave, she insisted on taking me out to dinner. I refused firmly. My schedule is tight. I need to get back to my own studies. She couldn't think of another excuse to make me stay. There was no argument she could make that would stop an ambitious young man from pursuing a better life. As I walked away, I saw the sadness on her face. She knew, in that moment, that I was a distant star. Even though our financial situations were worlds apart, the gap between our ambitions and our futures was a chasm just as deep. In the days that followed, Sophie was like a different person. She listened attentively during our tutoring sessions, all her rebellious antics gone. She never asked me to have lunch with her or go shopping again. After we reviewed her middle school coursework, I started her on the high school material she'd missed. My goal was ambitious, to get her through all of her sophomore and junior year material in 1 year, so she could spend her senior year focused entirely on review and college prep. She diligently completed every assignment I gave her, studying with a newfound focus. Later, her stepmother told me that Sophie wasn't just working hard during the day. She was staying up until midnight studying and waking up early to practice her foreign languages, completely adopting my study routine. I was genuinely pleased. Her stepmother also mentioned that Sophie's attitude toward her had changed dramatically. They started having dinner together, sometimes even going shopping. They would even talk about personal things, girl to girl. She gave me a knowing look, implying I was the cause, but I didn't take the bait. In the end, in addition to the $20,000 she paid me for tutoring, she gave me a bonus, a thank you check for another $10,000. I was proud of the change in Sophie. Perhaps everyone has a thirst for knowledge. They just need the right trigger, the right motivation. I didn't know if using her feelings for me to get her back on track was the right thing to do, but I knew it was a good thing for her. During that time, I got news from overseas. The university president himself had advocated for me. MIT, the #1 university in the world, after reviewing my background and academic performance, had offered me a full scholarship covering all tuition and fees. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. I made my final decision. I was going abroad. The day before I was scheduled to leave, my father's driver found me again. He handed me a legal document. It was a will, granting me 20% of the shares in Croft Industries. "This is a sign of your father's sincerity," the driver said. "If you agree to take the family name, all of this will be yours one day." He then pulled out a thick folder of property deeds. These are 15 residential and commercial properties, valued at over $50 million. "You should think about this carefully." He leaned in closer. "To be honest with you, your father has another son, but the kid is a total screw-up. All he does is party and waste money. He's a constant source of stress for your father." I cut him off, my decision absolute. "Thank you for the offer, but I have no relationship with him. His son's problems are not my concern." The driver grew desperate. "Cole, I know you're brilliant, but in today's world, good grades don't just hand you this kind of wealth. If you accept your father's inheritance, you'll be set for life. You don't have to worry about the other boy. Your father has decided to cut him off. He got into serious trouble a few days ago, threw a wild party on a yacht, and your grandfather found out. He was furious. The kid's been sent to a correctional facility. If you come back now, you can secure the family legacy for your branch of the family. You wouldn't want to see your father humiliated, would you?" I couldn't help but shake my head with a cynical smile. In the end, I was still just a bargaining chip. All he wanted was to secure his position as the heir to the Croft fortune. "Sir, what does any of this have to end with me? My last name is Matthews, not Croft. Whether the Croft family sinks or swims has nothing to do with me. You should go, but you're his flesh and blood," the driver pleaded, holding out a piece of paper. "This is the DNA test." I snatched the paper from his hand and, without even looking at it, tore it into 1,000 pieces. "Are you trying to emotionally blackmail me? I'll say it one more time. I have official documents stating I am an orphan. I am an orphan." I let the shredded paper rain down over his head, then turned and walked away without looking back. I never wanted a life of suffocating wealth. I wanted a family. I wanted a father's love. If Julian Croft had come to me, penniless, and offered a sincere apology, I would have forgiven him. But for this? Never. The next day, August 29th, I packed my bags for my flight that night. I went to the bank and withdrew the $10,000 Mr. Vance had given me from that first meeting. I had committed the date to memory. It was Sophie's birthday. Her driver had called earlier, inviting me to her party. I had declined. But after thinking it over, I found myself walking into a jewelry store. I bought a pair of pearl earrings and a birthday card. They would look beautiful on her. Sophie was the kind of girl who turned heads, who you couldn't help but look at twice. I was no exception. I had to admit, my feelings for her had grown beyond a simple teacher-student relationship. But I also knew she was still emotionally vulnerable. Her feelings for me might just be a teenage crush, a longing for a romantic ideal that would fade as she grew up. But my feelings for her, they were real. For now, I could only bury them deep inside. On the card, I wrote, "May your eyes shine bright, your heart be full of love, and your world be filled with beauty. Happy 16th birthday." I called the driver and asked him to deliver it to her. When he saw me with my suitcase, he insisted on driving me to the airport. I didn't refuse. Better to be on my way than to wander around a city that felt both familiar and foreign. After saying goodbye to the driver and giving him a few more of my old notebooks, I settled in for the long wait at the airport. Sophie sent me texts and called, but I didn't answer. I hate goodbyes. What was there to say? Would it be as awkward as our first meeting? I didn't trust myself not to break, not to let my emotions get the better of me. So I chose silence. But my plan fell apart. Just as I was about to head to the boarding gate, I heard a familiar voice cry out, "Cole, you thief!" I spun around. There she was, standing out in the crowd. Sophie. She was wearing sweats, with the brilliant pearl earrings dangling from her ears. Her face was stained with tears, a vision of heart-wrenching beauty. I froze, unsure of what to do. Should I hug her? Should I stay? Or should I just leave? My instinct was to leave, to stick to the plan. But my heart hammered against my ribs, a dull ache spreading through my chest. Had my feelings for her really grown this deep, that just the sight of her tears could cause me physical pain? "No, Cole," I told myself fiercely. "You can't have attachments. You have a long road ahead of you. You can't let one relationship derail your entire future. The idea of giving up MIT for her was absurd. Before I could react, Sophie ran toward me. She threw her arms around me and held on tight, as if pouring all her strength into the embrace. "Cole, you thief! You're a terrible person," she sobbed, her cries turning every head in the terminal. A handsome boy and a beautiful girl, a dramatic scene playing out for all to see. "You knew you were leaving," she choked out. "Why didn't you tell me? Did you really think you could just steal what's mine and walk away?" I was stunned. In that moment, I understood the intensity of her feelings. Her grip was so tight, I could barely breathe. "I admit I didn't tell you on purpose," I stammered, "but I didn't steal anything from you." She pulled back, her almond-shaped eyes overflowing with tears that streamed down her face. It was agony to watch, and I had no idea how to comfort her. She glared at me with a look of pure fury. "You stole my heart," she declared, and before I could respond, she grabbed my head with both hands and crashed her lips against mine. It was my first kiss. I had imagined it happening someday, imagined falling in love, getting married, but I never thought it would be so soon, so sudden. Her passion was contagious. My heart pounded like a drum. Her eyes were hazy, her lashes still wet with tears. I couldn't hold back anymore. I wrapped my arms around her, returning her kiss with an equal, desperate intensity. We kissed until we were breathless, feeling each other's frantic heartbeats. In that moment, nothing else mattered, not the stares of the crowd, not the future, only the raw, unrestrained emotions we had both kept locked away. Sometimes, you have to part ways to find each other again. In the end, we both went down our separate paths, but our connection was now forged in steel, unbreakable. For the next 2 years, I threw myself into my studies at MIT. I earned scholarships every year and gained the deep respect of the faculty. I completed the 4-year program in just 2. The university even extended an offer to sponsor me for permanent residency, wanting me to stay. Meanwhile, Sophie excelled. On her college entrance exams, she earned a score that got her an acceptance letter from Harvard. During those 2 years, I never came home for winter or summer break. We talked constantly on iMessage and FaceTime, sharing our dreams, our fears, and helping each other with our studies. It wasn't that I didn't have the time or money to visit. I was afraid that if I saw her, I wouldn't be able to leave again, that it would shake the foundations of the life I was trying to build. And I didn't want to distract her from her goals. We both had our own paths to forge. It was an unspoken understanding between us. But the day she sent me a picture of her Harvard acceptance letter, I made a decision. I turned down the offer to pursue a doctorate at MIT. I had no desire to immigrate. I was an American through and through. With my credentials and knowledge, I knew I could build a successful life back home. Most importantly, I wasn't going back to nothing. I had someone I couldn't bear to be without. On August 29th, I landed back in Denver. Sophie sent me a picture from the same hotel, the same private room as before. It was a family photo. Mr. Vance and her stepmother were holding a new baby brother. The 4 of them looked radiant, a picture of domestic bliss. I showed up at their door unannounced, dressed in a suit and carrying gifts for all 4 of them. When the stepmother opened the door, her face was a mask of shock. Mr. Vance had the same expression, his mouth hanging open. Sophie, who was sitting at the table, just stared, frozen like a photograph. I set down my suitcase and the other gifts, then walked toward her, holding a bouquet of 99 red roses, my heart pounding with excitement. "Sophie," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "happy 18th birthday." After I earned the Vance family's blessing, we became a family. At her birthday dinner, we took a new family photo, this time with me in it. I was no longer a piece of driftwood tossed on the waves. I had finally found the warmth of a home. While Sophie was at Harvard and Cambridge, I started my own journey as an entrepreneur. With our mutual support, my company flourished. Our love grew deeper with each passing day. We got married. The wedding of the youngest CEO of the nation's leading publicly traded AI company was a major event, drawing attention from all corners. Among the well-wishes, I received one from my biological father. He didn't come in person. It was the same driver, who this time brought only a letter. It was handwritten by Julian Croft himself. Between the lines, I could feel his guilt and regret. And, at the very end, he wrote the 3 words I had once longed to hear. "I'm sorry. I didn't forgive him, but I no longer hated him. He had given me life, but he hadn't been a part of a single second of it. Our paths would never cross again." That night, I stood on the rooftop terrace of our home, holding Sophie in my arms as we watched a once-in-a-century meteor shower. As I looked up at the brilliant star-strewn sky, I saw 2 stars that shone brighter than all the rest. In that moment, I was filled with a profound sense of gratitude for the boy I used to be, The boy who had fought tooth and nail day after day for a future he could barely imagine. He hadn't let a tragic childhood destroy his life. He hadn't sold his soul for the lure of money. He hadn't let the entanglement of love derail his ambitions. But most of all, I was grateful for the two bright stars that had guided me through the darkest nights, when I felt most alone. Mom, Grandma, I miss you so much, I whispered to the night sky. I've married a beautiful, kind, and wonderful woman. I'm living the happy life you always wanted for me. I hope you're proud.